Let's get a man. Full community interview and got another one. Grla Hebrew.
Yes, sir.
Explain to the people what exactly is a Hebrew Israelite.
So a Hebrew Israelite, we believe that black people and the indigenous peoples of the Americas, now identified as Latino, Hispanic, and Native American, are the literal descendants of the ancient Israelites. So all the people that we read about in the Bible, Moses, Daniel, David, Jesus, Paul, etc., we believe literally those are our ancestors.
And you came to that conclusion how?
Through examining biblical prophecy as well as historical documentation. So the biblical description of how the Israelites and what position the Israelites would be in the last days, taking a look at that, and we fit that description totally. And then also taking a look at historical documentation, Hebraic customs that we had in West Africa and the Americas and things like that.
What do you mean by the last days?
So the last days prophetically started after the crucifixion of Jesus, and it's just about the culmination of, quote unquote, the world as we know it. Not like the end of the world, like the entire planet Earth is going to be destroyed, but there being a changing of the guard. So even when you deal with, the Aztec, the calendar, the Mesoamerican calendar that they say was predicting the end in 2012, if you actually take a look at it, it's not predicting the end of the world, like the world was just going to come to an end, but it was talking about a change of the guard. And what's interesting is it's a count of 144,000 days. Right. And in the Bible, that number is significant, the 144,000. So the ancient Aztecs had that laid out for 144,000 days. And it starts in 1619. So what's interesting about 1619 is that's when the slave trade began as far as the importation of slaves into what's now known as the United States in Jamestown and Virginia. So from that point, for 144,000 days, what the Mesoamericans believed was at the end of that calendar, there was going to be like a change of the world, right? It was going to be basically like a new world, but it's not a new planet. But as far as the world as we know it was going to end. So that was like a time where, white people got on top, and then they were going to have their time, and then that was going to come to an end. So that's what we mean by the last days, when their time comes to an end.
So are you saying that prior to 1619, the Israelites, they were up, and the white people, they were kind of...
To a point, like if you look in the Americas, we look in West Africa, in the Americas, they come in 1492, of course, and they begin the conquest of the Americas. But prior to that, of course, what do we have? We have empires. We have the Aztec Empire, the Mayan Empire, the Inca Empire here. On the west coast of Africa, you have the Kingdom of Dahomey, you have the Mali Empire. You have all of that going on, and we're all by ourselves, thriving, having kingdoms, riches, resources, everything. And then all of a sudden, somebody creeps up out of Western Europe and brings an end to all of that,
So this is interesting, right? Because I've tried to do my own research on where, our people, the Mexican people have came from. And I could only go as far as back the Aztec Empire, right? Where were the quote unquote Mexican, right? You call them Issachar, correct?
He's at tribe Issachar.
Where were they at prior to them forming the Aztec Empire?
Well, according to the history of the Aztecs, they came from Texas, right? So then they migrated off into there. But what we believe is ultimately you guys are a part of the northern kingdom of Israel. So there was a migration that occurred. So after the time of King Solomon is King David's son.
Which is around what time exactly?
This is like 27, in between 27 and 3,000 years ago, right?
Okay.
So at that time, there was a split in the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel was 12 tribes. There was a beef between the tribes, and there was a split between the tribes. 3 tribes were in the south, and 9 tribes was in the north. The tribes in the north said, hey, we functioning like we're a whole different people than you now. We're separating ourselves from y'all totally. That became the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. So what we say is today that the kingdom of Judah is so-called blacks who came over here in slavery, be it in the Americas or in the United States or in the Caribbean. That's the kingdom of Judah. Then the kingdom of Israel would be the indigenous people. So when that split happened, the northern kingdom was carried into slavery by the Assyrians, right? After the Assyrian captivity, they left and got on boats and they came to a place called Arsareth, right? That's where if you watch the movie 1492 about Christopher Columbus, when he's talking about coming to America, he references Arsareth, which is written about in the Bible in 2nd Ezra in the 13th chapter. It says the northern kingdom came to a land that nobody ever lived in before.
And
right?
Arsareth is what's America today, correct?
America, and there's various scholars that believe that Arsareth is America, right? Various scholars that believe that. So you can even look it up in the Jewish Encyclopedia. They identify specifically Arsareth with Peru. So we believe that in outside of the Aztecs, the Mayans say that they were fleeing from the east, and they came on ships over to this side of the world in Mayan history. So what we believe is that the Northern Kingdom, y'all got on boats and y'all sailed over here. It says that it took 1.5 years to sail over here, right? So it took them 1.5 years to sail from the Middle East area all the way here to the Americas, and then y'all begin to settle in North, Central, and South America, becoming the first inhabitants of this place.
Okay, and this switch that you're talking about in 1619, is this prophecy? Like, is this fate? Was this supposed to happen, or did somewhere along the lines did the Israelites do something that caused the change to happen?
Both, right?
Okay.
So it's prophecy that if we didn't follow the commandments of God, that negative things were going to occur to us, right?
Such as white people putting us in slavery, correct?
Exactly.
Is that what you're referring to?
That's like the number one thing, them putting us in slavery, us being dependent on people outside of ourselves for our own survival, for our daily needs, you know, because a lot of people, they only want to relegate it to like the most harshest aspects of oppression or slavery, and that happened to our ancestors, certainly. But even today, we still are completely reliant on people outside of us, even those of us who have our own countries. Like my family's from Haiti. We're entirely reliant on foreign powers to get all of our resources. People outside of us have control over us. Even if you look at Mexico and Central America, you have Lebanese people, white people, they're at the head of industry in these countries. You see what I'm saying? So all of that is actually a part. Like when the owner of IKEA became the richest man in the world, and everyone was like, oh, the richest man in the world is Mexican. Well, he's Lebanese. He's Mexican technically, of course, because he's born in Mexico, but he's Lebanese.
So this is interesting, right? Because the biggest Mexican regional artist in Mexico right now is Peso Pluma.
Peso
right?
Pluma.
And he's actually Lebanese,
He's
right?
actually Lebanese, yeah.
So,
and that killed me too, because I was like, damn it, I like Peso Pluma. You know what I'm saying? I was like, damn, he's Lebanese? That even blew my mind.
So technically he's not a real Mexican, even though he's born in Mexico.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So he you know, we have nature versus nurture. So of course, if you're born in a country, you come up in a culture, you're going to adapt to that culture. But is your lineage from the, you know, the cultivators of that culture? No. You know what I'm saying? We know that those are, you know, the descendants of the indigenous people of Mexico who, you know, cultivate the culture of Mexico.